Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to another episode. This has probably been a long-awaited video. It's been a chaotic past couple of weeks, to say the least, but we're here. As you will have guessed, we're going with a reasonable sort of build. Yeah, that's what today's video is going to be about. I don't know if I'm going to be able to squeeze it all into one video because there's a lot of information. I'm going to show you step by step through the full build process, so building the full engine up, fitting it back in the car, just the reverse of what the previous video was basically. And I'll go through the various bits and why we're using them and what they are, etc. Before I go any further, I want to give a massive thank you to, firstly, this is in no specific order, by the way, but Mikey Singh, massive shout out, because without you, none of this would have been possible. You've put me in touch with the people that have been able to make all of this possible, sourced all the various parts and whatnot. Secondly, Tom at BC Racing and the team, they've gone above and beyond, as they always do. Fantastic, sourced me a couple of bits as well, and helped me out massively. And of course, thanks to Bren, the owner of BC UK, Apex. Next shout out is to Tom at Sprinting Hare JDM. He's supplied me with all of the parts, not the parts that Mikey hasn't supplied me with, basically. So all the RCM stuff, all the genuine Subaru stuff, and he's completely gone above and beyond, absolutely fantastic. So a massive shout out to him. I'll put all of the links to everybody in the description, but if you need anything parts-wise like that, genuine Subaru or aftermarket, Tom from Sprinting Hare, he'll go out of his way, you know. Fantastic service. So the other massive shout out is to Steve Guirey at Roland Alsop, the machine shop. I was with him yesterday. I drove down to Surrey to pick the block up and the heads. He's been solidly working on everything to get it machined and finished, and he stayed till 7:30, 8 o'clock last night whilst we were finishing off he was finishing off various bits, which I'll go into, and I was measuring valve clearances and stuff, but I'll go into that. So what I'll do is I'll go around. This is a lot of information, obviously. There's a lot of parts here. It might look like a load of junk from someone looking in, but yeah, every part is essential, and I'll go through it all in a brief bit of detail to explain what they are and why I'm using them. So I'll bring the camera over because you'll want to see the parts, not me. So yeah. So here we are, free hands. Where do we start? We'll start with the block. We've chosen to go with a closed deck block versus you can see up here, the other little blocks there. This is a semi-closed deck block, just a UK spec block. This is the original classic closed deck block. What we mean by the closed decking is the deck surfaces, all the water jackets it's a closed deck, and then it has channels for the water passageways and the oil passageways. Versus, it'll be easier if I quickly run over here and show you. Versus semi-closed deck block, which is an open deck block with just reinforcements in place. That's where we've had the cracking issue, because it's not a fully reinforced deck surface. So we don't need to go into any more detail about that. that's what we've gone with, closed deck block. Because we've gone with a closed deck block, it needs various bits doing to it to make it so that we can run the new age 2.5 litre crank to get the stroker. So we have, I'll flip it over and I'll show you. But we've had the rear main thrust conversion done. So 2 secs. It was as if by magic that. So yeah, as you can see from the factory, the closed deck block has a centre thrust location. And we've had machined a rear thrust location, so we can use the new age bearings. So yeah, that's what we've had done there. We've had the clearance machined. I don't know if you can see, but here, this shiny bit here and here, we've had 1 mil taken off the block, just so that the additional throw from the 79 mil crank is going to throw the conrods further out. Some blocks they catch on, some they don't, the conrod. So you don't want to go building the whole block up and then having to tear it all down again because it's fouling on that area. So we've had that 1 mil taken off already. Yeah, the other thing we've had converted is we've had the blocks and heads converted to 14 mil. So that's these, it's a bit of glare off that, sorry. These, you can see here, you can just see in the holes there. Those holes there have been drilled out to 14 mil, and then they've had the appropriate thread tapped into them. The heads have also had the holes drilled out to 14 mil, so they can accept the 14 mil head studs, which then I suppose takes us on the blocks had the obvious rebar and hone, which I'll go into in a minute because we had another issue there. Not issue as such, but yeah. Yeah, the head studs we have gone with, Steve Guirey makes his own, and they're rolled steel thread, 14 mil head stud, tried and tested, big power. These will hold big cylinder pressures and boost levels. So yeah, we've gone with those, and the proper rolled steel nut and spreader washer as well. So yeah, I'll show you them when we're installing them, the procedure, how to install them, and torque specs, etc., etc. So moving on from, well, I'll just briefly go over the crankshaft. The crankshaft's a stock Subaru 2.5 litre nitride treated crank. It's got a 79 mil throw versus the 75 mil of the stock 2 litre crank. So that's where we get the additional throw for the to make it the 2.1. We've gone with the same pistons as what I had previously. So it's the MAL 2618 pistons. They was brilliant in the last engine. And then we've machined out the bottom, because the bottom and base of the piston here, if you can see that little area there. That's a better picture. The reason for this is because in the base of the closed deck blocks, you have these little oil squirters under piston cooling. You can see that there, can't you? And because we're strokering the engine, the pistons are going to be taken further down into the block. So we need to machine, Steve has had to take off that area there just so it doesn't foul the oil squirter, if that makes sense. Conrod wise, we're going with a Carrillo. So these are fantastic rods. Steve's got them in his, he doesn't have these anymore, he has run these, previously in his drag car, and it's in excess of 1,000 horsepower. They've got the WMC bolts versus the majority that come with the ARP 2000s, like the old rods. But these are like an L19 sort of strength-wise. L19 625, like they're very strong. So this should future-proof the engine along with everything else. We should never have an issue with conrods. So that's the conrods. The reason, I'll go back just briefly onto the pistons. The reason we've had to go with these pistons, they're a 93 mil. I bought this block, Mikey sourced me this block, very short notice. and we thought it was a virgin block, but in fact, it had already been bored to a 92.5. Virgin block being they come 92mm bore, so the diameter of the bore. This had already been bored to a 92.5, so my pistons out of my old block, they were 92.5mm. We could have run them in this engine, but the issue would have been, we would have had to obviously re-ring the pistons, we would have done that anyway. The issue being the piston to cylinder wall clearance would have been too large. It would have been around 6 thou, which is a little under double what it should be. So I've had to buy new pistons, which is unfortunate, but it's one of those things. So moving on to the heads. These are where quite a bit of the work's been done. So what we did was I sent my heads down to Steve the day after I did the last video when we stripped the engine. I sent my existing heads off the old engine back down to Steve. Well, my mum did actually, she drove them for me. And I drove the block. But anyway, it was found that the cracks, one minute, I'll show you one, because it has got light cracks on one of these. Basically, on the old head, sorry, it had the famous Subaru, I'll zoom in and you'll be able to just be able to see, you can see here. They suffer from cracks anyway, Subaru heads here, and you can see that one a bit better there. It's very difficult to find a Subaru head that hasn't got cracks there, but it doesn't really affect anything. I bought my previous heads with these cracks in already, and one head didn't get any worse in the 2 years that I ran it, and the other head, it got a little bit worse. So anyway, the existing heads, the valve guides inside here were out of tolerance, which means that the valve is not going to be sitting back down onto its seat properly and causes a load of issues. So what we've done is Steve's luckily had these heads in that he'd got in Pikes or whatever he'd done, and he has been able to sort me out with them. Luckily, they've already had, you've got to bear in mind these heads are like 15, 20 years old now, so the guides wear out. Luckily, excuse me, these heads have already had the Supertech valve guides fitted to them. Steve's already done it, so that's saved us a load of time. In addition to that, so it's got the Supertech valve guides in it. I've got Supertech exhaust valves already. They were fine. Inlet valves, stock Subaru, they're fine. The rest of the valve train is fine. The springs and retainers, etc., they're all fine. So he's lapped all those in, refaced all my valves for me, and then this is the special bit. There's two special bits. What he's done here, it'll be difficult to pick this up on the camera, but on the factory Subaru, there is a large step on the bottom, on the base of the valve seat. So obviously that just ruins airflow coming in. So what he's done is he's got a CNC, I think it's a Newman, I believe it's Newman, and he's done a valve seat job. Sorry about that. I said to, Andy just rang me. Anyway, as I was saying, he's done a valve seat job here, and he's got rid of the lip that's, it's a huge lip from the factory that goes underneath the valve seat here, and he's got rid of that and done like a multi-angle valve seat job there. You can see there anyway. And then he's hand blended the area in between where the CNC job's been done and the rest of the port. So this is actually called, it's brand new. It was brand new. I'm the first person to have this done, but it's called his Pro Street valve job. So yeah, we'll see how it goes on the dyno. I'm just going to zoom back out. Yeah, and another thing to note as well. Just look at the quality of his machine work. It's like a sheet of glass. It's absolutely mega on the block surfaces as well. It's phenomenal. Yeah, so moving on from that, we've got valve train wise, we have stock Subaru inlet valves. These are still the 20-year-old, stock. He's refaced them and then relapped them in for me. We've got Supertech exhaust valves. These are the ones that I installed a couple of years ago on the last video build that I did. Stock springs, as I say. Supertech, same as last time, didn't have any issues. Supertech valve stem oil seals, inlet and exhaust. And then we've got Spec C cams, which are a lot more, I say. They're about, are they 3/4 of a mil? More lift, more duration, in short. So I should make more power at less boost. In short, without going into too much detail about that. Next up, I'll go on to the Supertech buckets. So I'll grab a stock bucket, 2 seconds. So here's an OEM bucket. This is what goes on top of the valves. It goes on top of the valve. The spring goes on top of here, and the retainer goes in there. Bucket goes on top of the valve, and then this area here works on the cam lobes as they're traveling around. Makes sense? So Subaru, on the new age, they have something called a shimless bucket. So this bucket is a specific measurement, and that measurement is on the underside of the bucket, which in this case is 4.89 millimeters. So that means that the thickness of that there, where my thumb is, you can see, that thickness there is 4.89 millimeters. So because I've had this valve job done on the heads, and the valve seat job done, and then some material taken off the seats on the valves, I've lost around 0.5 mil of that valve's 0.5 mil taller. Well, it's the same size valve. You understand what I'm saying. I've lost 0.5 mil. So that means that these buckets are no good. And trying to source buckets of like 4.49 mil, it's nearly impossible nowadays. So Supertech have come through, and they have an answer to this, and it is going back to the classic similar style, which is a shim under bucket. So they produce these buckets, same specifications as the factory bucket, but on the underside you get a box of shims, and you fit the appropriate shim, to give the correct clearance on the bucket, the bucket to the cam lobe. So that's easy. I didn't intend on doing this initially, but I've run out of time basically, so we had to. That's the lube to run the cam lobes in. Obviously they need to be hardened. That's really important. So you put this on your buckets and on your cam lobes, and that'll run this surface in of the cam lobe. I had to get one of these because I told Steve that I was using a traditional, I'll show you it. I told Steve I was using this, and he was like, don't use that, mate. He was like, it's just trouble waiting to happen. I did use it on the old engine. It was difficult because I had to go another half a click and hold it there whilst I put the piston in, but he was like, they're no good. So we're not using that. We've got a proper ARP 93 mil installation. This is 1 thou smaller than the bore, so it slides in perfectly. So that's that. The other thing is when we've had the block machined out, the holes there for 14 mil, obviously the dowels which support, these are factory dowels, and they've been machined out the centres to allow the fitment of the 14 mil head stud, and this locates the block to their head. There is other companies that do them, but they're not as good as the factory dowel at keeping the head in the same place as the block, aligned to the block. Some of them do like split ones and stuff like that. But anyway, because they're so thin, because the material's been removed, you have to have a special installation tool. So Steve makes one of these, and it's got a little recess there. So this slides around the head stud, and then it has a plastic washer that's to set the height. Obviously the height that height that that sticks out of the block. So a nice little tool that he's designed and had made there, just for that job specifically. Been over the rods. It's got its own graphene or graphite, whatever it'll be, assembly lubricant, which is for the rod bolts, which is very important that you use this, because their torque specs, what they tell you to spec to in there, is only when you're using their assembly lubricant, because you're going to get different torque readings with different lubricants. So very important, use that if you're doing this. Some new Koyo, they're just timing belt bearings and tensioners, not tensioners, sorry, the tensioners over there, we'll go through that in a minute. What else we've got? We've got a mug, and Tom, this is Tom from Sprinting Air. This is what I mean when I say it goes above and beyond. Look at that, brews and sweets to get the build done. He sent me a big bag of sweets, big bag of sweets. I don't know that. Face mask in there, and a mug and coaster so we can have cups of tea, which is spot on, yeah. We've got this is one thing I wanted to note on as well. These are the bungs that go in the head, so they go in all the oil passageway in here like this, and these oil passageways are what feeds the cam lobes, and there's a few around the block. And what people don't do when they're cleaning heads out, these are all dead ends where these bungs are. If you don't take them out, if these are used heads, which 90% are nowadays, your bearing material will end up at these dead ends, and it can work its way back around to your bearings, which is not good. So he's taken them out, he's cleaned out all the waterways for me. I've got to go over this and do another thorough clean. Cleanliness is the most important thing when building engines. Honestly, you can never be clean enough. So this is the stuff, it's called well seal. This is the stuff that you put those bungs back in with. Don't use threadlock. Threadlock doesn't need to be used anywhere. Just use this well seal. That's for putting those back in. That's retainers. I forgot to give a shout out to Opie Oils as well, actually, because Opie Oils have supplied me with the oil. Not this oil, sorry. This is from Steve. This is the running in oil, mineral oil, at the correct weight, 1550, which is important. I'm going to use the same oil as what I ran last year, so the Titan Pro Race R, the 1550. So I've got 10 litres of that, because I've got the Acusum still going in there. We've got the piston rings. They're all, Steve's gapped them for me, which is mega, saved me a big job. He's done it to 6 thou per inch of bore on the top ring, 5 thou on the top ring per inch of bore, 6 thou per inch of bore on the second ring. So I believe that works out to about 18 thou on the top ring and 20 to 21 thou on the bottom ring. Then the oil rings are anywhere between 15 and 30, I believe. What else do we need to go on to? Tom's supplied me with all genuine, everything genuine. I've not got it all out because it's nothing good, fancy to look at, but there's a bag full of all the block seals, every single gasket and seal, all genuine Subaru. Tom supplied me with there. We've got the factory, camera's doing what it wants. We've got the factory, the rocker cover gasket seals there. There's his mug. Got me a mug and a little coaster. So, where else are we going next? Oil cooler. We've just got exactly the same one as what was on the car because I'm not risking, you can't clean them. So I've just got a brand new one. Oil pump, I've gone with the 12mm this time because we have the under piston cooling. I was on an 11mm previously, and it's very easy to over pump a Subaru. So you can put, a lot of people think bigger is better, which it normally is in respect of oiling, but on the Subaru, they have a little bypass valve here, and once the system's up to the pressure of the pressure relief valve opens, and then you just recirculate the oil through the pump, which then cavitates and overheats the oil, which then is worse than having a correctly sized pump for the engine. So And obviously you won't know about this. It's just all going on inside here. So basically I've gone with a 12mm because I did spec the old road engine without an oil cooler, without an Accu sump, without under piston cooling, and my 11mm was right for that engine, and AVCS, sorry. So for this engine, I've got under piston oil squares, which is going to be using a bit of volume, losing a bit of pressure. I've got all the lines for the oil cooler and the oil cooler, and then I've got my Accu sump as well. So all in all, the 12mm is the one I've gone for. Moving on from that, we've got RCM half moon gaskets. They're nice little touch. These, they're billet aluminium and they go in the sides of the heads. Do you know where they should be over here actually with the rocker cover gaskets? That's part of that kit. RCM's oil pickup, which is a factory pickup with the castellated rubber on, which is from the WRC weld. I think it's for when they used to get damaged, you know, to the bottom of the sump when they'd hit rocks and stuff, and the metal sump would touch against the bottom of the strainer and then it would starve the engine of oil. So this protects from that, and it also moves it so that the lower level of oil that you can run you can run a lower level of oil in the engine before it picks up air, if that makes sense. I think it makes sense. I don't need to go into more detail about that. RCM head gaskets. They're 0.78mm. I may need to go to a 1.1mm, but I'm not sure yet because I've not measured the, I can't think of the word, but you know what I mean, the piston, how far it sticks out or sticks under the bore when it's built up. So we should know that later today. Genuine Subaru exhaust manifold gaskets. RCM 3-bolt up pipe gasket for their up pipe. We've gone with the Spec C water pump because I'm deleting the oil modine. So the factory engine has an oil cooler that goes here before the oil filter. So the oil filter screws on like somewhere around here. On my car, I had the modine, an additional oil cooler, and then you know, the sandwich plate for the additional oil cooler, and then the oil filter. So we're deleting that. There's the delete kit from Sprinting Hare. This is, I'm pretty sure they're a factory Subaru part number. And then the blanking plug, which goes it goes in the block where the spout would come out for the water pipe, you know, to go to the modine, because it's a water-cooled oil cooler. So because of that, we have to go to a 2-port Spec C, because they run an additional oil cooler, similar setup to this. So we have to run a 2-port water pump rather than a 3-port. The 3-port has one coming out of here, which then goes to the modine, and then the modine goes into the block, into there on a spout normally. And that's what this bung's for. So in that water pump, this is a genuine Subaru water pump. It's got the cast impeller wheel, which is better than the pressed tin ones. I always run them ones, personal preference. We've got RCM's high flow, low temp thermostat, so it's 70 degrees. It just opens at a cooler temperature, giving the cooling system a bit better chance. We've got the RCM's new oil filter, which is supposed to increase oil pressure and volume. So I know it's been manufactured by the same company, so using the same items as the genuine, the expensive, you know, the pink STI, the genuine Subaru ones. So it's not some aftermarket filter that's been used that's got, you know, cheap internals. It's a proper bit of kit. So Tom sent me 2 of those. Tom from Sprinting Hare sent me 2 of those. Obviously one for running in, and one for when we've got the synthetic, you know, the ester-based, like when we've got the proper oil in the engine. The other thing, I don't know if you remember me saying, but we had the original pulleys, and they had a little bit of a crack. Obviously, they're like a Bakelite 2 seconds again, I'll go grab it. Here we are, like magic again, it's just appeared. This is the stock one. So bottom left, this is driver's side lower exhaust pulley. So I've written scrap all over it. But I noticed like a little hairline, can't see it now. When I took it off, like, oh, can you see it there? Just there. Like a little hairline, sort of fracture-y crack. Anyway, not risking it. So we've got rid of that one. And then I noticed that RCM, this is through Sprinting Hare again, by the way, Tom sourced these. RCM do a nice metal one. I don't know if it is billet. It's got a nice weight to it, but there, yeah, we're fitting these because they're better, and it's got a nice little RCM badge on it. So we've got for both sides. The top ones are obviously AVCS, so they're a factory Subaru. This is for the other side. Yeah, that's all we need to go into on them, I think. And then some new genuine Subaru bolts to bolt them back on with. The other thing, I'll touch on the sump, what we're doing with that in a minute, but the other thing I want to go on to is the RCM high grip tensioner. Now this is a mega bit of kit. This is not necessarily for me at this stage now, it's for when I go sequential, but it provides a constant grip on the timing belt, a constant increased grip. So I'm not going to go into a mass amount of detail on it, but if you're watching this, you're most likely going to know what this is. But there is a guy called Flat Iron Tuning in, I believe he's in America, but I'll put his thing up here and I'll write his link in the description for the specific video. But he goes into a lot of detail explaining this and its benefits, etc. So there's no point in me going over it. I've watched that video, it's a good video. I'll link it and then he can go over it if you're interested in it. So yeah, that's going on the car. We've got a Dayco HT timing belt at the back there. It's like a PTFE lined. I'm not sure if it's Kevlar. It might be Kevlar. Probably is Kevlar actually. Thinking about it. It's not those blue ones. You know them blue ones that everyone puts on that you see, and then the blue mess goes all over your whole engine and just looks awful. This is Dayco's version. So I believe it's Kevlar. It looks like it's Kevlar on the thing, but it's got the PTFE lined on the inside as well. So that's the timing belt. We've got the rest of the timing components over there. You've already seen those there. Other things, we are running a RCM baffled sump. We're going to be running the Accu sump as well. Accu sump's over there, you can see. We're going to be running an RCM baffled sump. I'll take this off so you can see what's inside it, because there's nothing, well, I don't think there's anything online to show you. When I was looking, I couldn't find anything, and I thought it'd be interesting to take it out to show you what it looks like inside. Excuse me. Yeah, 2 secs. So that's what it is, just like a little insert with them patented like little rubber flaps, you know, that RCM have on their baffle plates and stuff. So yeah, it's just a stock sump, factory WRX sump, and then they've welded this plate in here, ground the top plate off, left the bottom one in, interestingly. This is the oil return from the turbo. Yeah, so, and then they put a titanium magnetic RCM little fancy sump bung in there. And then they also put an AN8, I believe it's AN8, you know, for oil catch can return to sump, which is a nice little addition there. So I'm going to be running this. I nearly went dry sump, but that's another story. I ran out. We've not got that much money to. But anyway, I am still on treaded tyres. So we're going to be running this with the original, the RCM baffle plate that I was running previously. And as I say, the Accu sump as well, which should, there's the Accu sump, which should be sufficient. Yeah, I think that's That's everything. We're going to be running, let me flip this round 2 seconds. Yeah, so we're going to be running the original turbo, which is, there is it? Is it? Yeah. Yeah. We're going to be running the original turbo that we've ran all season, you know, the one that we had rebuilt at the beginning of the season. And that we are, without going too much into it, we've got something booked for Thursday this week, so we're on Saturday now. We've got somewhere booked for Thursday, which I'll cover. I'll get plenty of videos of. But basically a running in, and then we have mapping booked for Friday. So we should see a little bit more power maybe, and at lower boost levels, because it's going to breathe much better now on all these new cams and new valve seat job. Better flowing heads. So what I'll do now is I'll put it on time lapse, and I'm going to get set up on the bench over here, and I'll get all the old cams and that cleaned off there. But we're going to go clean all the heads again, all the heads and the blocks, and then I'll go over. I think I'm going to voice over it, but we'll go over the important areas. Obviously, I'm pressed for time, but we'll go over the important areas that you need to concentrate on when we're building the block up. But it will be predominantly a time lapse. So, because as you can imagine, if I was describing through all of this, the video would be about 8 hours long. So, so I'll go to the time lapse. It's already going to be a long video, but go to time lapse, and then I'll cut in and out and describe various bits. And then hopefully by the end of today, we should have a short block together, and all the bearing tolerances sorted and whatnot. But yeah, I'll go to the time lapse now, and I'll speak to you in a bit.